Will the former Massachusetts governor's Mormon faith be a problem for his candidacy? Is America ready to elect a Mormon president? Joining us now is Pastor Robert Jeffress of the First Baptist Church in Dallas and Ralph Reed, chairman of Faith and Freedom Coalition. Pastor Jeffress, look, I'm not a theologian, that's for darn sure. But on the one hand, you say Mormonism's a cult. Then on the other hand, you say, but oh yeah, if Romney runs against Obama, I can support Romney. You're confusing me. Where are you going with this cult thing?
Well, I think, first of all, it's always preferable to select a Christian who's competent over a competent non-Christian. But when I was talking about a cult, Larry, I was talking about a theological cult, not a sociological cult like David Koresh. And when you look at Mormonism, look, it was founded 1,800 years after the Christian faith. It has its own leader, Joseph Smith, its own doctrines, its own book, the Book of Mormon. So it fits the definition of a theological cult. But I think your viewers would be interested to know that today, USA Today cited a poll that said 3 out of 4 Protestant pastors don't believe Mormons are Christians.
All right.
This isn't some bigoted Reverend Wright position. This has been a position. They're good, moral people. They're just not Christians. And to a lot of your viewers, that may make no difference whatsoever.
Let me go to Ralph Reed. Let me go to Ralph Reed. Ralph Reed, I want to ask you if this flap is going to be the beginning of a problem for Mitt Romney and lower his so-called electability. How big a hurdle is this going to be in your judgment, Ralph?
I think the reality is that Mormons and evangelical Christians part when it comes to theology, and those theological differences are deep and abiding, and they have long historic roots. But the fact of the matter is, Romney's been around this track before. He's run before. He knows all the players. He's checked all the boxes. He's taken a position that is pro-life, pro-marriage, and pro-family. He's moved on those issues, so he's got a bar to clear. But I don't believe for one moment that either evangelicals or other voters are going to make their decision as to who they believe the CEO of America ought to be based on whether or not they're a member of their church or not. I think they're going to do it based on who shares their values, who shares their stands on the issues, and whether or not that person is uniquely qualified to lead America into the 21st century. And I would go further, Larry, and I would say that's not only true of Mitt Romney, it's true of Rick Perry. Rick Perry and I share the same faith.
Well, Rick Perry disagreed with the
for him to get votes, he's got to demonstrate he knows how to create jobs and how to restore the family.
But the interesting part of this story is for Pastor Jeffress' statement that Mormonism is a cult. Rick Perry, through a spokesman, immediately turned around and said he did not agree with that. And, Pastor, I want to ask you, what if Eric Cantor ran for president? He is of the Jewish faith, but he is also a very prominent conservative leader. Would you say the same thing about him?
Well, the question is, who would he be running against? It's always a choice. I've already said publicly I would vote for Mitt Romney over Barack Obama. I think it's better to have a non-Christian who embraces some Christian principles like Mitt than a professing Christian who embraces unbiblical positions like abortion. But, Larry, somebody said to me in the hallway in Washington, D.C., they said, my problem with Mitt Romney is not that he's a Mormon. He's not good enough of a Mormon. He's been all over the issue, as Ralph alluded to, on the issue of life and abortion. And we're under Romney Care, there was an allowance for a $50 deductible to have an abortion. I think those of us who are conservative evangelicals really wonder what we're going to be getting if we get Mitt Romney. And I think there's some other candidates, including Rick Perry, who have a long, strong, consistent record on the issue of life and the sanctity of marriage.
Ralph Reed, talk to me about the evangelicals who, I might add, this is from your own notes, voted more heavily for John McCain in 2008 than they did for George W. Bush in 2000. President Bush was a committed Christian and a born-again Christian. Will the evangelicals walk away from Romney? Or let me put it to you another way. Will the evangelicals give Governor Perry the margin of safety he's been missing so far?
Well, I think it's a little too early to be choosing the nominee of the party, Larry, although I know you'd love to have us do that tonight on your show. I think the reality is that unlike some of the media caricature of people of faith, they're not poor, uneducated, and easy to command. They're not bleating sheep who just go where they're told to go. They're very smart. They're very sophisticated, and especially in these early primary states, New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina, they're deeply ingrained in the party machinery, and they're going to these events, and they're kicking the tires, and they're looking at these candidates. And I certainly think that one of the factors among many that they look at is an affinity with the moral values and the faith of a candidate.
But not the religious views, not the strictly religious views,
no,
right?
I think
freedom of religion is so important.
I think Martin Luther had it right when he said, "I'd rather be operated on by a Turkish surgeon than a Christian butcher."
We'll leave it there.
And I think that's where most.
But we don't have to make that choice.
Jeffress and Ralph Reed, I appreciate it. That's it for this evening's show. We all believe in religious freedom, or so I very much hope. I'm Larry Kudlow. We'll be with you tomorrow night.